Odyssey expansion is out now, and indeed there's plenty to discuss. As a counterweight for my 5 positive things I already did, today's topic will be for less than stellar, well, not quite there yet, not great, missing a mark a bit, a little bit off, or rough aspects of the latest expansion with the space legs. See, I've always hated using these non-committal, wishy-washy descriptions that I just listed. I feel that they attempt to be forthcoming, looking forward, and sort of a kind description when a baby decides to open up a family album and tear every single picture apart. Today I commit on not using any of my usual expressions, and even staying away from a crass language, because I want this to be as clear as possible so that even the most retarded lobotomized chimp could understand. So let's begin. The number 5 on this list is a big change that be felt by everyone, the new planet tech. Well, it was so advertised to us by bringing even devs on the public stage. At the time, no one could have realized how much of a shambling corpse could the new planet generation end up being on arrival. Even on Alpha, people quickly noticed that all the canyons had disappeared, and once pretty planets with the deepest of them now look like discolored balls with nails stuck through them. The color that was once given to these planets in the first update of Beyond, like what you see on the screen with the Mitterrand halo, in Odyssey gets completely washed out with this ugly, generic and rather flat looking thing. Even up close, as you take pretty screenshots, you notice that the surface is distorted by those spikes with rounded edges. Only when you squint or take a forced perspective with a screenshot, you'll find something pretty. The worst part is, this lesser version will be transplanted into Horizons, and that'll be the last time we'll ever see those unique and a bit more believable planets. And all of this to just put in better textures? I ask, is this even worth it? Then number 4 is my own forte, the FPS gameplay. While I have played all sorts of shooters, when developers describe a dangerous shooter mechanics as thinking man's FPS, I cannot but to look at the man and contemplate the inner workings and mechanics of one's brain functions. But there is no escaping the fact that basic principle upon which this FPS is built is bullet sponge, meaning that you have weapons dealing very little damage, allowing the player to really lay into the opponent, minimizing the twitch and reaction-based skill gameplay. Basically put, the FPS is catered to the less capable player, but at the same time having rather quick movement, not only horizontally but vertically as well, and to top it off with a very, and I mean very fast recharging health bar, while weapons themselves have very imprecise aiming, recoil, fire rates, and effective range basically being 200 meters, meaning that they are trying to cram an arena shooter in an open world game, is basically a great strategy for attrition warfare, which is absolute worst thing you can do to an FPS game. It truly feels like 10 different ideas being mushed together without any iteration. It's incredibly how frustrating and unfun these shooter mechanics and features end up being. In my quote-unquote review, I called the FPS portion of the game a basic foundation level, and indeed, that's what this feels like, an outsourced basic Unity asset flip shooter. The planets are not the only ones going away. The number 3 is the whole UI change for Galaxy Map, outfitting, starports, and on foot. Galaxy Map is now turned into an icon-based travesty that no one understands. The only thing that it does well is look pretty in screenshots and videos, while it is a complete nightmare to explain to newbies and a headache to those who already learned it already on the old one. Outfitting now has become a clicking nightmare where to equip anything from the stored modules or simply buy a new module, you are asked to perform several times more clicks and steps than before, and this includes controllers even more. At first we thought that yeah, maybe the UI was remade so that controllers have easier time with it, but anyone who has ever had the displeasure of touching the new UI will testify to its unusability. During alpha I already commented saying that basically the new UI was made by somebody who has never played Elite Dangerous, and it shows. I truly think that both of these instances will break Elite Dangerous for everyone. It's such an unmitigated disaster that the best that can happen is complete removal of this new UI for console launch. This has the power to make people stop playing the game. And as for the foot UI, this is such a level of pandering to controllers that we just don't have one wheel menu, we have two of them. And trust me when I tell you, wheel menus have never been good. They work, but they are an incredible encumbrance to everyone. It's so ugly and annoying that all it takes is just simple comparisons to Star Citizen or No Man's Sky to tell you that this was made by an amateur that didn't know better, and it will be the worst part of the Legs gameplay. And then we come to number 2. It's engineering, my nemesis and bane of all that's fun. This is where the game should have become interesting and inviting. To unlock an upgrade, an attachment to your gun, or a new ability perhaps. You remember that moment back in the day when you first played a game where you could upgrade your gear? That magical moment, unfortunately, is nowhere nearly dangerous. I mean, we knew that, but I guess we all hoped for better. Instead of sparking joy of spending a few minutes doing different tasks and going to get that new coveted scope for your gun, you realize that the engineer still needs 29 opinion polls that have less than 1% of chance of spawning in some random settlement. And you realize that after hours, even days of doing circles, seeing the same settlement for the 1000th time, even refining your farming route to a 10th of a second, you still have not found what you were searching for. And then there's even more after that. A constant grind, the horrible gameplay loops, and more. Limited space in your spacesuit and then also in your ship for the materials leave you completely depressed. You realize that you don't boot up Elite Dangerous anymore to play with your friends that you made along the way. You don't boot up Elite to discover something beautiful or see something incredible. It's no longer about experiencing the space dream you once had. You have logged in today to spin a virtual gambling slot machine. This is malicious design, and whoever made it should be very ashamed for what they have done as a game maker. Did you really get into this industry to create games like this? And for what? Just so Frontier can report to their shareholders that you and others have spent hours playing their latest product? I mean, sure, they don't care if those hours were fun or depressing grind. It's just a number to them. Are you proud of your work? Can you honestly call this something to be proud of? But what's more insulting is the number 1 spot, the appalling performance and overall state of this expansion. Now, I'll allow myself a joke here. Tell me, do you know why Frontier priced Odyssey at $40? Well, it represents the amount of frames you're gonna be buying. Well, what a launch. A complete failure by any standard. The saddest thing is that this is called a finished product. But why? Well, long and short, Elite Dangerous Odyssey was promised to be delivered to the shareholders of the company by the end of the fiscal year of 2021, which for Frontier just ended. Seemed it didn't matter what the state the product was. Priority was to ship it out and letting employees deal with the backlash. You know, back in 2012, when Elite was announced, this little company was churning out some work-for-hire video games with some dreams of something greater one day. And Elite was it. Elite Dangerous and the loving fans, loving developers managed to uproot this company and set it on a road to success. You could feel genuine effort and emotion out of everything. As the time went on and the smell of money got more intense, I noticed the quality slipping in a vain attempt to shove out another update for some arbitrary deadline that the public did not know about nor cared for. With another new game in tow, Frontier could finally say that they finally made out of the muck, with a lot of loving fans behind them, but that was not enough. You could feel that something had took hold of the developer, and while for me it clicked very early on, we all can see it plainly now. The love of the fan base and respect it gave to the developer now gets betrayed without so much as a second thought, and all that just to meet yet another deadline. Frontier is a company with a lot of money, unlike back in the day, so unlike then, today you can actually delay and polish your work, but the heads of the company decided it was not worth the time. CEO David Braben later, after disastrous release, comes to deliver apology letter number 1, and a few days later, apology letter number 2, being very careful to word it like this. First and foremost, I would like to apologize wholeheartedly to those who have been suffering from these problems. Being very careful to address that only if you feel like you're having issues, only then the apology should address you. On top, he implies that the product was fully ready and is still ready, it just simply has a few issues. Later he uses also rather specific rhetoric to avoid any admittance that they knew that the product was not ready and is broken, and yet still decided to release it. Oh, granted though, if he admitted those wrongdoings, releasing an unready product, the shareholders would have a right to sue the company. Yet, all that such lack of admittance of wrongdoing does is cast an ever longer shadow onto actual developers, the poor employees who now need to rush out actual development. No, not fixes, actual development that has been cut and hasn't been made in the first place, because now not only the bosses are watching, but also the public keeps shouting. I truly have nothing but the sadness in mind thinking about the bottom level developers over at Frontier that now have been backstabbed by the greedy and disconnected, out of touch dinosaurs that have no place in the industry and should just retire. It's such a disgusting situation that when your beloved game, once that sparked joy, now not only abuses the players, but also going from a sole savior of the studio, now becomes basically a disposable garbage being thrown at the wolves. So Frontier Developments, for abusing the goodwill of your fans, for abusal of your players' time, for abusal of the customers' money, for abusal of the community's love, and for abusal of employees and their work. And from me, the little Latvian, fuck you!